welcome viewers. Dr. J.W. Ayub in the office, theologist since 1994. The life of Muhammad and the verified revelation structure of the people of the book. Episode 31, the exhaustion of performance in Islamic ideology. The words still sound correct. The routines still continue. The Muslim listener still participates publicly, but internally, exhaustion has started replacing peace. Not sudden collapse, just slow depletion, slow religious depletion. In the previous episode, viewers, unresolved tension inside the Islamic ideology authority structure began splitting public conformity from private unrest. In this episode, the consequence surfaces visibly: the exhaustion of performance inside Islam. Because once belonging becomes psychologically tied to maintaining visible certainty, emotional energy increasingly gets redirected towards survival rather than truth examination. And at first, for the Muslim, the fatigue feels manageable. Then the Muslim inside the Islamic authority structure learns how to maintain appearance externally while suppressing unresolved contradiction internally. The Muslim brings correct phrases, expected reactions, careful silence, visible agreement. But eventually the strain accumulates. The body participates, but the mind monitors. The conscience remains unsettled. And slowly the Muslim adherent begins recognizing something difficult. Constant performance, religious performance, trains the soul differently than honest examination. And that mechanism becomes extraordinarily powerful because long-term emotional concealment gradually restructures daily Muslim existence itself. The pressure no longer appears only during theological discussion and practices. Now it enters ordinary life. Meals, prayer, conversation, silence, even rest begins carrying tension underneath for the Muslim. And that pattern appears repeatedly throughout Islamic history, especially once conformity regulates belonging, certainty regulates safety, performance regulates trust, and suppression regulates stability. Because once emotional preservation becomes psychologically fused to maintaining the Islamic structure externally, exhaustion increasingly becomes a hidden cost of unresolved internal contradiction. And the transition rarely feels dramatic initially. Usually it feels necessary, responsible, even protective. Viewers, the Qur'anic submission structure repeatedly reinforces obedience and surrender surrounding Allah and the Messenger. If we read Quran 33:71, it reads, "And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has certainly attained a great attainment." Now, That reinforcement matters enormously, because once visible obedience becomes emotionally fused to spiritual legitimacy itself, unresolved internal tension increasingly becomes something the Muslim listener feels obligated to suppress rather than continue exposing openly. The environment adapts there too in Muslim life. Smiles become rehearsed, certainty becomes performative, questions become internalized, and emotional fatigue quietly accumulates beneath the routine. And eventually the one tied to the Islamic allegiance structure begins carrying a burden the collective rarely names honestly. And that is the exhaustion of sustaining outward alignment while inward tension remains unresolved. And viewers, that's not peace. That is behavioral governance operating through emotional depletion. And the prophetic witness carried among the people of the book applies a radically different standard. Trust must remain examinable openly, constantly. The conscience of the people of the book must not survive through concealment, but much rather transparency. And spiritual legitimacy must withstand scrutiny without requiring exhaustion, producing performance, emotional suppression, or divided internal existence to preserve belonging. The Lord himself, the Master, the Messiah of the people of the book on the Christian side, the one who fulfilled the Jewish side in the prophetic scriptures, said, "Come to me, all who labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And quite frankly, viewers, that might be a good idea for the Muslim, because that distinction matters enormously now, because verified revelation survives scrutiny without requiring chronic emotional management, psychological fragmentation, or spiritual exhausting performance systems to preserve allegiance. Yet, beneath the outward routine of the Muslim, the unresolved question still haunts, it still remains standing. Does Muhammad's Islamic ideological authority structure, Islam, truly reflect continuity with the prophetic witness carried among the people of the book? Or has exhaustion itself become another mechanism protecting the expanding submission-based structure from unresolved examination? For the Muslim, the routine continues, the fatigue deepens, and the performance grows heavier and heavier. I'm Dr. J.W. Ayub, theologist since 1994. Like and subscribe. Press the bell if you like the content to show that somebody's watching the channel. Comment to educate me, and share the video with somebody else just to do something kind. Viewers, in the next episode we move into the silence of self-protection for the Muslim. Because once exhaustion deepens far enough, many Muslims no longer argue internally against the tension. They stop speaking about it altogether and just live with it. Till then, viewers, bye for now.